Well, happy Thursday. Final program of the week as I'm taking tomorrow off, but we got a ton to tackle here, so appreciate you being here live this morning. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop here with the Center Square, live with you each and every weekday morning. Sometimes I have to go super duper early. Yesterday was one of those days as I had to get to the motorcade for U.S. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's visit to Springfield. We'll hear some of the conversation around that arrival, all about the state's non-citizen migrant sanctuary policies and the impacts on public safety and politics here in the land of Lincoln. Plus, yesterday, we had a Gun Violence Prevention Committee hearing where they talked about Senate Bill 8. They didn't advance it out of committee quite yet, but still ongoing debate about the particular issues within that measure that would require gun storage and certain reporting requirements for lost and stolen firearms, shortening the timeline people have to file lost and stolen reports. So we've got tons to tackle here, including the latest filing from the state of Illinois in the case challenging Illinois' gun and magazine ban. And you can see that already if you go to thecentersquare.com. It's the top story there. State files gun ban brief as continued debate over safe gun storage. Tons of stories you can get at thecentersquare.com. Be sure to sign up for the newsletter, and it's free. All you got to do is just put your email in and you'll get updates in your inbox each and every weekday morning. But obviously, here with YouTube, the Center Square goes live each and every weekday morning for you to stay connected with what's going on in the land of Lincoln. We've got just a handful of weeks here. What is it? It's the 8th of May. Legislative session's supposed to wrap up May 31st. So there's a lot that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, including finding out just how much the state's going to spend of your tax dollars for the forthcoming budget. So those conversations still ongoing. We'll get clear details at some point. Might come at like a midnight run of legislative session late this month. But there's tons of other things they're discussing as well. We'll unpack all of that as it happens. But stay tuned, because coming back, we'll talk about Kristi Noem's visit to Springfield and the reaction from legislators to the conversation about the state's migrant sanctuary policies. It's right here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning, because if you do, you can hop into the live chat room. Bunch of regulars in there discussing what's going on here in Illinois. So if you want to get lively with the crowd there, make it happen here each and every weekday morning live with Illinois in Focus Daily. Politics and public safety. That's the words of the day yesterday after Kristi Noem, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security in the Trump administration, made a stop in Springfield, Illinois, and talked about Illinoisans who's lost their lives at the hands, allegedly, of illegal aliens in the state. I'm Greg Bishop. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. We've got tons to tackle here. Yesterday morning, I had to do the show earlier than usual because I had to be at the airport for Noem's arrival here in Springfield. She flew in by way of a U.S. Coast Guard jet to the Springfield Municipal Airport, and there were two vans of press that were screened and able to get in. So we were stuck in those vans for what felt like an eternity sometimes, but there was like a 15 vehicle motorcade or something like that. That was traipsing all throughout Springfield, from the airport to a processing facility where Kristi Noem had a face-to-face with some federal agents, and then also was able to talk to at least one of two detainees who were allegedly non-citizens being processed. I've yet to get detail on those detainees, but one reporter that was allowed into that first stop, they only let photographers in and a select few photographers in. But one of the reporters said that they heard one of them was a Guatemalan national being processed. So here we go with the first stop. Not much as far as the rest of the media being involved there, but then we're heading through downtown. We didn't know exactly where we were going. DHS officials were being very guarded with that information. Security reasons. And whatnot, but there was anticipation that Noem would end up going and setting up outside the governor's mansion, downtown Springfield, and that word got out at some point the night before. And protesters said, hey, show up at the governor's mansion at around 9 o'clock. And as we saw with the AFL-CIO, they said, let's have some good trouble. And there were protesters outside the governor's mansion holding up signs saying, hands off our immigrants, and critical of the GOP and President Trump and Kristi Noem. But the motorcade ended up not going to the governor's mansion. Instead, we went to a street corner close to downtown, but a residential area, 8th and Kennedy in downtown Springfield, where they set up a news conference, and that just so happened to be the location of a murder victim being found. Somebody who was murdered allegedly by an illegal immigrant several years ago in Illinois. But here's Kristi Noem laying out the crux of why she showed up to Springfield, Illinois, to highlight Governor J.B. Pritzker's policies that she says is harming public safety.
Governors like J.B. Pritzker don't care if gangbangers, if murderers, rapists, and pedophiles roam free in his state. If they are here illegally, he's going to protect them. And for most of my career, I have fought these kinds of criminals and fought to protect my people in South Dakota, but also across the country. And that is what President Trump is focused on here today. Governor Pritzker, change your ways, protect your people, help us clean up our streets, and help us stop this violent, illegal, alien, criminal activity that's happening in your state, and your people are being so disserviced by the actions and the support that you've taken against this administration to try to work to make America safe again.
So she obviously was there with a lot of individuals. Some had their loved ones killed by illegal immigrants, or they overdosed on fentanyl that comes across the border illegally. Sharing their story. Pretty heart-wrenching hearing some of that. But why didn't we go to the governor's mansion? We instead went to 8th and Kennedy in downtown Springfield. There were no protesters there at that point. And she set up, started talking, and said why she chose that corner in downtown Springfield as the location for the news conference.
Just a couple of houses away from here, Emma Schaefer was brutally stabbed and murdered by an illegal alien who was released into the United States by the Biden administration. He had already been previously arrested for kidnapping and had been released, and then he had entered back into our country under the Biden administration to perpetuate more violence, and eventually took Emma's life. She lost her life to an illegal alien that's still out at large, probably in this state. We can't confirm that because the local law enforcement and the state law enforcement are barred by state law, with the support of Governor Pritzker, from sharing any information with our ICE officers or HSI officers. This is the individual who killed Emma. And I would ask you to implore your leaders here in this state to participate with us so we can bring him in before he kills someone else. He stabbed her repeatedly, over and over again. She lost her life, and her killer is still loose today.
Unclear if that alleged murderer is in the United States, in Illinois, or possibly in Mexico. But Interesting, they chose that location. Noam was asked if she had talked with the Schaefer family about bringing them to this event that Noam was holding in downtown Springfield. Noam said they'd been trying to reach out to the family, but apparently some of the family were at that protest outside the governor's mansion. And then when the protesters got word where Noam was, a handful of them showed up right at the tail end of the news conference, blowing whistles, screaming expletives. One guy had a huge sign saying F, spelled all the way out, fascism. They were very, very vocal in swearing, and one even alleged that a DHS official shoved them and was trying to make a report, and people were screaming, go home, Noam. They were saying that Schaefer's family doesn't support her. And actually, here we've got a statement from the Schaefer family, essentially saying that no parent should have to experience the loss of a child, but every time her name is brought up into these conversations she would have wanted nothing to do with, we have to relive the pain of her death. Secretary Noam, as a mother still grieving the loss of a child, I beg you to stop. This is not who she was. This is not helping us. Her memory should live on in all people she touched and the causes that she fought for. And I ask all of you to remember Emma as she was and to live your life as she did with courage, courageous empathy and love for all. So the family didn't appreciate Noam using the loss of their daughter as some way to highlight the need for cracking down on violent illegal immigrants and how the state's sanctuary policies allow for somebody to be arrested when the alleged killer of Schaefer was arrested for allegedly kidnapping, but then was let go. And this is after he was in the country illegally and released back into the United States and allegedly stabbing to death Schaefer. So all of this, the protesters came over. They were pretty rowdy. We'll hear a little bit more of that in the aftermath coming up here from State Representative Adam Niemerg. But Democrats held a rally outside the Capitol with Senate President Don Harmon talking about how Noam's visit had no effect on the state's migrant sanctuary policies.
There are those who choose to use their positions to weaponize fear, to turn government agencies into engines of cruelty and hate. So many people have used that word cruelty. This is cruelty for the sake of being cruel. Instead of doing their jobs, they are dividing our country. And yet, here we are, gathered in unity. We stand together, working, dreaming, voting, winning.
So, Harmon talking about how the Democrats are unified. But as you saw behind Noam, there were a bunch of Republican state legislators standing with the Department of Homeland Security. House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch also getting in front of the crowd outside the Capitol yesterday, responding to Kristi Noem's visit.
Let's talk about a president and secretary who don't understand that due process is a constitutional right. Let's talk about legal residents of the United States forcibly removed from their homes and shipped to foreign prison camps. The dystopian vision of Illinois that Secretary Noem outlined today bore no resemblance to the communities we represent here today.
So you've got the Democrats standing steadfast, and even Governor J.B. Pritzker posting on X via his political account the issue of, the protesters outside the governor's mansion. Here is some of that post. Kristi Noem and Donald Trump's publicity stunts have no place in Illinois. Thank you to the peaceful protesters who showed up today with their megaphones and microphones to reject the Trump administration's attempts to intimidate and divide Illinoisans. We won't let them win. And just to cycle through some of these photos that the governor's political campaign, you know what, here I am. I didn't realize I had the wrong screen up. So here's Pritzker's post. And here's some of the photos. So go home, Noem. No one messes with our governor. You got, more signs. OMG, GOP, WTF. That's the governor's mansion out there. And then you've got, due process is a right, not a privilege. When injustices become law, resistance becomes duty. So those are some of the photos of what the governor said were peaceful protesters. Now, I saw the protesters that showed up at the Noem event. There weren't any arrests made because, at least that I saw, DHS was rushing media back into the van so they could head us back to the airport so we can get our vehicles and get back to work. But the protesters that did show up, there were about 12 of them, very, very vocal, loud, swearing, getting into the face of legislators that were leaving, swearing at them to, get lost, essentially. State Representative Adam Niemerg was one of those that showed up, and he said that things could get dangerous, and the rhetoric that he says the Democrats are pushing is only going to make it worse. Here's Representative Niemerg yesterday from the House floor.
The opportunity to stand with Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem and honor the Angel families who have suffered as a result of the illegal immigrant crisis here in the state of Illinois. It was truly touching to hear their stories, to hear their loss, and to hear why it happened. It's because of the sanctuary status policy of this state. It's because of the sanctuary city policy of Chicago that's causing this to happen. We must end these policies. I thank God that President Trump was elected, and I also thank God that Kristi Noem had the courage to come here today. But I also am very upset by the governor's comments last week inciting violence. Protesters were told Republicans should know no peace. Following this very peaceful press conference today, protesters caught up with the vehicle I was in, cursed at us, spit at us, said unspeakable things, then used their vehicle as a barricade so me and several other legislators could not get around. Thankfully, everything worked out. We were able to get through and return here safely. But somebody's going to get hurt. These policies have to end. Inciting violence is wrong. We have to return to reasonable. These are common sense measures of deporting criminal, illegal immigrants who have done unspeakable acts to the citizens of this great state. So I hope we can change these policies and make Illinois for the better. Thank you.
How this proceeds forward, especially with, feels like the election season's ramping up again with all of the rhetoric and politics that are being had on issues like this. There's a lot that's going to happen, including Governor J.B. Pritzker testifying in front of Congress in the weeks ahead about sanctuary policies. So you've got that. You've got the ongoing lawsuits that the Department of Justice has against the state of Illinois, Cook County, and Chicago over migrant sanctuary policies, the health benefits that taxpayers subsidize, how that's going to be put into the budgets. Are there going to be any savings there? Are we going to continue to give money to that program? A whole host of things, all on this issue about border security and public safety, and so on. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning here with YouTube and the Center Square. Get the newsletter at thecentersquare.com.
Representative Norma
The state of Illinois responding to a federal judge saying that the gun and magazine ban is unconstitutional with a filing in the appeals court. Got the latest there, but we also have the latest debate about safe gun storage, a proposed law moving through the State House. Is that going to pass before the end of the month? We'll be watching closely. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for waking up with me each and every weekday morning. The live show goes on at about 8 o'clock. So if you want to join the live chat, you could do that. Or if you can't make it to the live show, don't worry. You can listen to it in its entirety either back here on YouTube with the Center Square, or you can find the podcast. If you're traveling around, going on a road trip this weekend, get the show that way. And also don't forget about the weekend edition as well. I'm going to be joining the Center Square's reporter Jim Talamonte out of Chicago to talk about a whole host of things. So that'll be coming out. But clearly here on YouTube, you can get news clips and segments of the show and more. So make it happen. So we've been tracking the lawsuit against the state's gun and magazine ban since before it passed January of 2023 and was enacted, because there's just a lot of interest here in the state of Illinois. There's more than, 2.2 million FOID card holders in the state, in a state that's less than 13 million. So there's a significant amount of gun owners out there who have complied with the state law to get a firearm owner ID card. Illinois is one of 4 states that require something similar to that. That's being challenged in federal court, but I'll have to get updated on where that's at. It's been challenged in state court as well. Several times it's been deemed unconstitutional by county level judges, but those cases don't really proceed too far. But the gun ban, the challenge there went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court on preliminary grounds in 2023. And on preliminary grounds, the Supreme Court said this case isn't ready yet. So the Supreme Court does have a case from Maryland, Snope, but they haven't really acted on that. They haven't decided whether or not they're going to take that case. When they rejected Illinois' case on preliminary grounds, they said this case isn't ready, it's not ripe yet. They gave it back to the appeals court, which then kicked it back to the district court. And then in the summer of 2024, you had Judge Stephen McGlynn hold a 4-day bench trial. Tons of information and background on that. Everything about what the appeals court said on preliminary grounds, that semi-automatic firearms are too similar to military firearms. Well, back at the district courts, they had a 4-day hearing talking about the differences between military grade and civilian grade, everything from the metallurgy to the various components and how they're manufactured and tested and such. So interesting stuff there. But Judge Stephen McGlynn in the Southern District ultimately ruled against the state, saying that the law was unconstitutional. But he put a stay on his order, and that stay being re-upped by the appeals court, and the appeals court sat on it for like 4 or 5 months before they were asked by the plaintiffs to give a briefing schedule because they're in limbo right now. And the court immediately turned around and said, here's a briefing schedule. Plop. And yesterday was the deadline for the state to reply to the district court. Let's take a look at that really quick. Here is the case, and you can find this at thecentersquare.com. 267 pages of it. All right, 267 pages. How about we do this? How about we just go to what the state has as summary of the argument. All right, let's do that. Summary of the argument. So we'll go down to page 17 here. Scroll. You can see all the different sections that they've got going on. Where are we at? We're only on page 2. Holy cow. All right. We'll get there. So the state filing this yesterday. The plaintiffs file tomorrow. And they will ultimately, or not tomorrow, next month. I'm sorry. Typically it's 30 days in between filings. So the state will file yesterday. The plaintiffs will file next month. And then the state will have a chance the month after to reply. And then we can anticipate getting some kind of oral arguments set up in the appeals court on this case. But let's go to the summary argument from the state yesterday in their filing. They say in Beavis, which was on preliminary grounds, the Beavis case out of Naperville, challenging Naperville's gun ban, and then challenging the state's gun ban. So in Beavis, again, on preliminary grounds, because that case is still back in the district court on the merits. And actually, that hearing has been held off while this case proceeds. Anyways, in Beavis, this court determined that plaintiffs were unlikely to succeed in the merits of their Second Amendment claim because, based on the record before it, the Act's restrictions satisfied the text and tradition test outlined by the Supreme Court in Heller, Bruin, and subsequently reaffirming in United States v. Rahimi. On remand, state defendants developed substantial additional evidence that confirms the preliminary determination in Beavis, as well as the similar conclusions reached by every other court of appeals to consider the issue. And lists all the different cases. The district court's contrary determination was incorrect, they say, as a matter of law for several reasons. First, the act does not restrict conduct within the scope of the Second Amendment's text because the items it regulates are not arms, the state argues. The evidence showed that the regulated items are offensive, militaristic instruments that are not commonly used for individual self-defense, which is the core lawful purpose protected by the Second Amendment. In addition, large capacity magazines, LCMs, assault weapon attachments, 50 caliber cartridges, and accessories used to increase the rate of fire of semi-automatic weapons are not arms because they are accoutrements that are unnecessary to operate firearms. Accoutrements are essentially like attachments. I think that's ultimately what that word means. When a soldier was putting on different types of armor, those were considered accoutrements. Second, the act is consistent with the principles that underpin our country's regulatory tradition. States' defendants' evidence establishes a long-standing tradition since the founding of restricting civilian access to especially dangerous weapons and reserving them to use to train military and law enforcement professionals. Moreover, the more nuanced approach to Bruin's second step is warranted because the act was passed in response to unprecedented societal concerns brought by the dramatic technological changes in weapons technology, the increasing frequency of deadly mass shootings that are committed by lone shooters armed with assault weapons and LCMs. And under this approach, the Act's restrictions are consistent with historical tradition of regulating especially dangerous weapons, including the minimal burden that those restrictions impose on the rights to self-defense and the justifications for imposing that burden. Finally, the endorsement affidavit requirement, where you have to register your firearms, is constitutional, the state says, as this court has already unanimously determined, the appeals court in this case, in Beavis, because the requirement's no cost, simple process, and automatic conferral of rights do not necessarily prevent law-abiding, responsible citizens from exercising their Second Amendment rights. So that's the summary of the argument from the states that they filed yesterday. Again, the plaintiffs file next month, and then the state will file again the month after that. Then sometime this summer we could possibly see a hearing. And could that have a determination before the end of the season, before the end of the year? Whatever happens there, likely it's going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. And if the U.S. Supreme Court gets it, and they haven't acted on the Snope case yet out of Maryland, could Illinois' case be the case that the U.S. Supreme Court takes up? Especially with that pretty thick record that the district court generated from a 4-day bench trial. So we'll be watching that closely. But while that's all going on, while the state's having to defend its gun ban in federal court after a district judge said it was unconstitutional, you've got the state looking at more gun laws, including Senate Bill 8, which was brought up in the House Gun Violence Prevention Committee with a subject matter hearing yesterday, and it's already passed the Senate. Senate Bill 8 already passed the Senate last month. Now it's in the House, and here's State Representative Maura Hirschauer talking about the measure. She says, will bring about public safety by requiring people to lock their firearms up under certain circumstances. Here's Representative Hirschauer.
Storage can reduce unintentional injuries, suicides, and intentional harm, like school shootings. About 75% of guns used in school shootings are accessed at home.
So she's saying that we need to lock firearms up so kids don't take the firearms and shoot up schools. But you've got the likes of Josh Witowski from Illinois Federation for Outdoor Resources. He said that this thing has already, this idea of making firearms inoperable has already been found unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Removing the ability to place in some other location where a reasonable person would be believed to be secure from minor under the age of 14, that means you are required to leave the firearm inoperable, either by locking it up in a box or by having a trigger lock on it. This has already been determined to be unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court in D.C. v. Heller. Specifically, they state, we must also address the district's requirement as applied that firearms in the home be rendered and kept inoperable at all times. This makes it impossible for citizens to use them for the core lawful purpose of self-defense.
So Witowski talking about Supreme Court precedent that you can't say you have to have your firearm inoperable, because then it takes away an individual's ability to lawfully use a firearm in self-defense. Because what's the saying some in the Second Amendment community have? When police are minutes away, what is, somebody may know that in the chat. When seconds matter, that's what it is. When seconds matter, police are minutes away. right? You get that? And also, I mean, another saying, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. Interesting stuff there. Anyways, all right, so, Wojtowski talking about how, that's already been found unconstitutional. We'll see how that argument stands, but there's two components to Senate Bill 8, not just the safe gun storage aspect, but you've also got the shortening of the time frame to report lost and stolen firearms, and including civil penalties if you don't report lost and stolen firearms within that timeline prescribed by what could be state law.
The reporting measures that we have in this bill will give law enforcement the tools they need to crack down on lost and stolen guns and hopefully end that cycle of violence.
So they want to be able to have police getting those lost and stolen reporting requirements in place, and there could be civil penalties. Freedom's Steel, Todd Vandermeide, former NRA lobbyist and gun rights guru, as he says, gun rights advocate. He talked yesterday remotely in front of the committee about how the lost and stolen provisions and tacking on a civil penalty if you don't follow the law, well, that could lead to some severe consequences, like the loss of a firearm owner ID card and ultimately confiscation of your firearms.
The addition of being able to revoke a FOID card for failure to report a property crime. And even under the second iteration of this, the penalty is only a Class A misdemeanor. The only other Class A misdemeanor that we do anything about is the domestic violence crime, which is a crime of violence. However, now you're talking about revoking FOID cards for mere failure to report a property crime. This sets a new low, and I think it runs afoul of all the Supreme Court precedent that we've had.
So Vandermeide making those points and staying in the debate, going back and forth with people on these issues. And here's some more of yesterday's hearing.
Okay, I just have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
What is a trap shooter?
Clay pigeons. Are you familiar with clay pigeons at all? Mm-hmm. So it's a sport. In fact, it's a sport that brings in a lot of tourism to the state of Illinois. We have an entire complex in southern Illinois dedicated to it. In fact, there's a bill that's agreed upon that's going to allow 14-year-olds to work at that complex as scorers. But it's clay pigeons as they go through the air, and you shoot a shotgun to shatter the pigeon.
So again, the question was, what's a trap shooter? Because Wojtowski was talking about trap shooters are younger in age sometimes that are competing, trying to get scholarships, and some of this law could impact their ability to do such things because they, parents would have to lock up their firearms if 14-year-olds around. And the question, kind of highlights a lack of knowledge about the firearms space. When a legislator asks, what's a trap shooter? And they're going to be able to vote on this legislation. More back and forth from some of the Second Amendment advocates and those who were pushing for this law to be put into place. Again, Vandermeide going back and forth with one of the proponents from GPAC about how this could impact people coming in from other states.
I can tell you, I happen to be the president of the largest gun club in the state of Illinois. We have almost 3,000 members. We host a lot of matches, and evidently the proponents don't understand how some of these matches work, because our 3-gun competition, pretty much every individual that shows up to compete has at least 3 firearms, a handgun, a shotgun, and a rifle, if not a backup firearm, that would run afoul of PICA. And I can tell you right now, we are already seeing a decline in our out-of-state participation for regional and statewide championship matches. And regardless of how you want to focus on FOPA or whether or not this applies in A and not B, I can tell you what the interpretation for the people who surround us, who like to come to our club to compete in recognized matches, is going to be they're not going to come. We've already seen a 30% drop-off since the beginning of PICA with our 3-gun competitions.
Yeah,
and that's the way it's going to be treated. And I'll tell you what happens. If you get pulled over in Cook County, they're going to say, tell it to the judge. We'll let him sort it out. In the meantime, your firearms are confiscated. You're charged with whatever they can drum up at any given moment. And that's how it's going to be applied.
I don't think this provision would apply to that situation. It's limited to a firearm prohibited by 24-1.9.
Yes,
So-
and all our competitions are done with AR-15s, AK-47s, semi-auto shotguns that have more than 6 rounds. Evidently, you've never seen a 3-gun match. I would suggest you go to YouTube and look up what 3-gun shooters do.
And there was a little bit of uncomfortable silence there for a span of some time after that exchange. The measure did not advance out of the House Gun Violence Prevention Committee because it was only a subject matter hearing. Today, no, that's tomorrow because I am off tomorrow. Tomorrow's the deadline to get Senate bills out of the House. However, they can waive the rules and add new deadlines to these measures. So this measure may be one of those where they waive the rules and say that the deadline to get it out of committee is, I don't know, May 25th or something. I don't know. I'm just making that up. But they could do that, right? The Democrats have the super majorities and they can just, on a voice vote, waive the rules. So we'll be watching to see what happens with Senate Bill 8 before the end of session, and we'll also be following up on the ongoing litigation in the federal appeals court over the gun and magazine ban. As you can read all of this and more at thecentersquare.com. Get the newsletter. Donate. We're a nonprofit newswire service covering what's happening in state government for you, the taxpayer, to be able to be better informed. And don't forget, you can wake up here each and every weekday morning with the Center Square on YouTube. Programming note, though, I'm off tomorrow, Friday, but we'll be back at it live on Monday. All right. Like it up. Share it up. I'm Greg Bishop. This is Illinois in Focus Daily. Guys, I got to get out of here. The legislature back in today. We'll see what they do. I didn't see any afternoon committees this moment, but they could waive the rules and say they have afternoon committees. They're supposed to be in tomorrow as well, but they could possibly cancel tomorrow. We're in that weird phase of, yes, it's the last month of the legislature, but, why not bottleneck everything into the last couple of weeks? It's just more work for us here, I guess. Have a great rest of your Thursday. I'm off tomorrow, and I hope that you have a wonderful Mother's Day. It is a important day. Miracles happen with the mother, so definitely send that love that way, all right? Have yourselves a wonderful weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.